Steelers Nation, get ready. The NFL spotlight is heading overseas, and Pittsburgh is right in the middle of it. This Sunday, the black and gold will face off against the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin, Ireland. It's more than just another regular season matchup. It's a chance to bounce back, make a statement, and prove that this team can adapt under pressure on one of football's biggest international stages. The buzz around this game is real. Both teams are walking in with questions to answer. The Steelers are 2-1 but haven't looked consistent on offense, while the Vikings are trying to get their rhythm with Carson Wentz under center. Dublin becomes the proving ground where both squads will either silence their critics or fuel them. Now, before we dive into the deeper issues, like how Pittsburgh's run game is broken or how defenses are clamping down on their passing attack, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss a single update as we track every move this team makes through the season. Back to Dublin. The atmosphere overseas is going to be electric. Steelers fans travel everywhere, and you can bet Acrisure Stadium energy is coming with them to Ireland. But the Vikings? They're not flying across the Atlantic just to play nice. With stars like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison lining up, this will be one of the toughest early season tests for Pittsburgh's defense. And here's the kicker. The outcome in Dublin might not just define this week. It could set the tone for the entire first half of the season. So that leaves the question. If Pittsburgh wants to survive this matchup, what's the biggest change they need to make in their run game? Stick around, because that's where we're headed next. Steelers fans, let's be real. The biggest red flag so far this season isn't the defense, it's the run game. Week after week, Pittsburgh tries to lean on their zone scheme, and week after week, it keeps collapsing. The offensive line has struggled with execution, the coaching hasn't adjusted, and the result has been a ground game that feels stuck in neutral. Here's the problem. The Steelers are running zone on nearly 60% of their rushing plays. That might work for some teams, but not for this roster. Guys like Broderick Jones, Isaac Sumalo, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fatou. These are physical linemen built for a gap or power scheme, not a finesse-heavy zone approach. Right now, it feels like Pittsburgh is forcing a system that just doesn't fit the talent they have up front. And the proof is in the backfield. Jaylen Warren, arguably the most explosive back on this roster, thrives when he's running gap concepts, where he can follow a pulling guard, hit the hole, and explode downhill. But when the Steelers keep dialing up these stretch and inside zone calls, he's stuck waiting, second-guessing, and too often running into a wall of defenders. If Pittsburgh wants to take the pressure off their young quarterback and finally get this offense moving, the shift is obvious. Lean into gap and power football. Play to the strengths of your offensive line and your best running back. Until that happens, the ground game will stay predictable and underwhelming. So here's the real question. If the run game keeps stalling, can this passing offense carry the load, or will it crack under the pressure? Stick around. That's coming up next. If the run game has been Pittsburgh's biggest weakness, the passing game isn't far behind, and defenses across the league are starting to figure it out. One coverage look in particular has given the Steelers fits. Cover 5. That's a two-deep shell with tight press-man coverage underneath, and teams have leaned on it to choke out this offense. Why does it work so well? Simple. There's no consistent run threat to punish defenses for sitting back and too high. The quarterback isn't mobile enough to scare defenses with scrambles. And the wide receivers? Too often they're getting jammed at the line, leaving the timing of routes completely disrupted. When you put it all together, it's no wonder the passing attack has looked stagnant against these looks. But here's the thing. There are ways to beat cover 5. The Steelers just aren't using them enough. Pre-snap motion can force defenses to declare their coverage. Stack formations or bunch sets make it harder for corners to jam receivers cleanly. And rub routes, those traffic-creating plays that free up a man in space, can open up easy completions that turn into big gains. These are small adjustments, but ones that can make a huge difference. And here's where things get tricky. The Vikings don't normally lean heavily on cover 5. They're more of a quarters and cover 2 defense. But don't be surprised if they break tendency. We've already seen teams go against their usual game plans just to target Pittsburgh's weak spots, and it's worked. If Minnesota rolls out heavy doses of cover 5 and the Steelers don't have answers, this offense could be in for another long day. Which leads to the next big storyline, Pittsburgh's defense. With key players returning from injury, how much will that change the game plan? That's what we'll dig into next. On the defensive side of the ball, there's finally a bit of good news. Both Joey Porter Jr. and Deshon Elliott have been spotted back at practice this week, sparking some hope that Pittsburgh could get key reinforcements just in time. But here's the catch. Their actual game status is still very much up in the air. Hamstrings can be tricky, and until the Steelers see Porter go full speed, there's no guarantee he'll be lining up on Sunday. If Porter Jr. is able to return, though, it could open up the playbook in a big way. Without him, the Steelers have leaned heavily on off-man coverages, simply because they don't have many players on the outside who can survive in press situations. Porter, on the other hand, thrives in those one-on-one battles at the line. Having him back wouldn't just boost the secondary. It would give the defense more flexibility to disguise looks and tighten up against opposing wideouts. Meanwhile, Deshon Elliott's presence at safety brings stability and experience on the back end. Even if he's not quite 100%, just having him available changes how aggressive the Steelers can be in their coverage shells. One area that still needs work, though, is the blitz strategy. Pittsburgh currently ranks near the top of the league in blitz rate, but the approach has been pretty basic. A lot of what we've seen is five-man rushes, sending everyone straight at the quarterback. It's pressure, yes, but not necessarily creative pressure. Against weaker offenses, that might get the job done. But with tougher matchups on deck, predictable blitzing could backfire in a big way. And that's the real question. Will the Steelers keep leaning on volume pressure, or finally get more creative with their schemes? Now let's turn to this week's opponent, the Minnesota Vikings, and the matchup problems they bring to the table. At the top of the list are Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, one of the most dangerous wide receiver duos in the league. Jefferson might be the best receiver in football right now, and Addison's speed and route running make him a serious threat in his own right. Together, they demand constant attention. That's why heavy doses of man coverage could be a disaster for Pittsburgh. If you leave Jefferson isolated without safety help, chances are he's going to win that battle, and win it big. Even good corners get exposed when left on an island against him. So asking anyone not named Jalen Ramsey to handle that assignment one-on-one is risky at best. Instead, the smarter approach may be to lean on a bend-don't-break zone strategy, the kind we saw work last week. The idea is simple. Keep everything in front of you, limit explosive plays, force the Vikings into long, methodical drives, and eventually wait for mistakes. And against Carson Wentz, that's a sound bet. Wentz has always been prone to forcing throws, misreading coverages, and breaking down under pressure. Those tendencies often turn into turnovers, and the Steelers' defense is built to capitalize when those chances come. Still, there will be moments when Pittsburgh has to go man-to-man. In those spots, the assignment is clear. Jalen Ramsey has to shadow Jefferson. He's the only defender with the size, athleticism, and experience to have even a chance at slowing him down. So the matchup comes down to this. Can the Steelers limit Jefferson's impact while baiting Wentz into costly mistakes? If they can, their defense could once again be the difference maker. So after breaking everything down, the offensive struggles, the need to adjust the run game, the passing issues, and the defensive strategy, it all leads to one big question. Can the Pittsburgh Steelers actually hold the Minnesota Vikings under 20 points this weekend? That's not an easy ask when you're lining up against Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and an offense that can explode at any moment. But there's reason for cautious optimism. Last week, Pittsburgh held the Patriots under 20, marking the first time in a while that they kept an opponent's scoreboard low. They did it by forcing turnovers, playing disciplined zone coverage, and preventing big plays downfield. If they can replicate that bend-don't-break formula against Minnesota, they'll give themselves a real chance. The wild card, of course, is Carson Wentz. When he's on, he can stretch the field with confidence. But when he's pressured or asked to sustain long drives, mistakes start creeping in. That's where the Steelers' defense has to pounce. The more plays they force Wentz to make, the higher the odds he'll put the ball in harm's way. On the other side, Pittsburgh's offense doesn't need to be explosive, but it does need to be efficient. Sustaining drives, finishing in the red zone, and at least establishing a respectable run game would go a long way in keeping the defense fresh and the Vikings' offense on the sideline. And let's not forget, tomorrow brings the final injury report. Whether Joey Porter Jr. or Deshon Elliott is available could dramatically shape how aggressive this defense can be. Their status might tilt the balance between another gritty win or a long day trying to contain Jefferson and company. So, can the Steelers keep Minnesota under 20? That's the storyline to watch heading into kickoff.